picture the man you once admired, not for his success or his possessions, but for his fire. He was the one who stayed out too late debating philosophy with strangers, who booked a last-minute ticket across the country just to see what he might find, who carried himself like life was a field to be conquered rather than a set of chores to be managed. Now imagine meeting that same man again years later, not in a smoky bar or a crowded lecture hall, but in the aisles of a grocery store on a Saturday morning. His cart is filled with organic kale he doesn't even like, almond flour he'll never use, and the expensive brand of yogurt his wife prefers. His shoulders sag, his eyes are dulled, and he pushes forward not with curiosity, but with obligation. He isn't living anymore. He's completing errands. You watch him rehearse an apology in his head, preparing for the disappointment if he picked the wrong brand. And you wonder, when did the lion become a pack mule? This is not an isolated case. Walk through any suburban neighborhood and you will see the same scene played out in 1,000 variations. Men who once commanded boardrooms now seek permission to buy a beer at a barbecue. Veterans who once made life or death decisions under fire now hesitate over whether they can spend Saturday afternoon on a hobby. Artists who once poured their souls into music or painting now pour their earnings into mortgage payments for homes decorated in styles they never chose. The great domestication of men has become so normalized that we barely recognize it anymore. But make no mistake, it is a transformation as dramatic as taming a wild animal. The tragedy is not just in the change itself, but in how silently it happens. Men rarely notice the slow erosion of their own independence. Each step feels reasonable, even noble. Every concession is wrapped in the language of compromise, maturity, and love. But over time, the sum total is devastating. The man who once roared with freedom now whispers his requests like a child asking a parent for dessert. Psychologist Erich Fromm once wrote, "Love is the child of freedom, never of domination." Yet modern men often confuse domination with devotion. They tell themselves they are sacrificing autonomy for the sake of their family, their marriages, or for peace. They interpret obedience as maturity. What they fail to see is how systematically their independence is being drained, not all at once, but by 1,000 small concessions. First, it is asking before buying a shirt, then checking before calling an old friend, until eventually every decision is filtered through the approval of another. Men do not lose their independence in a single moment. It is shaved off piece by piece until they are hollowed out. Consider the man who once road-tripped across 3 states just to see the ocean. Now he asks permission to drive across town for a friend's birthday. Or the musician who once poured his weekends into songs that made strangers weep, who now trades his guitar for assembling flat-pack furniture because it feels more practical. These changes look small in isolation, but stitched together, they tell the story of a life no longer lived for itself. Like water dripping on stone, the steady erosion of freedom shapes men into something smaller than they were meant to be. It's important to see this clearly, because what we call compromise is often something far more insidious. Men are told they are lucky to have found partnership. They believe they have entered a contract of equality, of shared dreams and mutual growth. But what unfolds resembles less a partnership and more a quiet reordering of power. One voice begins to guide the budget. Another voice manages the social calendar. And eventually, one voice dictates the direction of life itself. The other, once full of conviction, grows quieter with each passing year. If you've ever wondered why so many men seem to fade into the background of their own lives, this is the answer. They are not just aging, they are being reprogrammed. You may be tempted to dismiss this as exaggeration. Surely love requires some sacrifice, some consideration. Of course it does. But the line between healthy compromise and systematic domestication is thinner than most realize. And once crossed, it is difficult to retrace. Men become like frogs in a slowly warming pot, adjusting to each new degree until they are cooked without ever knowing it. They don't recognize that the steady replacement of their individuality is not love, but a subtle form of control. Here lies the paradox. What men are sold as intimacy often becomes their cage. What is framed as equality often masks a hierarchy. What is presented as mutual support often functions as managed dependence. And because the shift is so gradual, so dressed in the language of devotion, few ever see the machinery at work. They simply wake up one morning and realize they cannot remember who they were before they became someone else's project. The truth is uncomfortable. Modern relationships, as they are commonly practiced, do not just encourage men to compromise. They condition men to surrender. They reshape lions into oxen, rebels into employees, leaders into approval seekers. And the most dangerous part is not that this transformation occurs. It is that men believe it is normal, even noble. They defend the very cage that imprisons them. But if love should be the child of freedom, then how did it become the parent of obedience? How did passion, once wild and untamed, become another chore on the calendar? And more importantly, who benefits from this transformation, and at what cost to the men who undergo it? These are the questions we must begin to answer, because they reveal not just personal choices, but a system designed to engineer compliance through the most seductive promise of all, love itself. And if you think this system stops at surface-level concessions, you're mistaken. The deeper we look, the clearer the machinery becomes. Financial traps, social isolation, even the quiet dismantling of identity itself. What seems like affection often conceals architecture. What feels like devotion often hides design. And once you see the design, you can't unsee it. If the first cracks in a man's independence appear almost invisible, the system that widens those cracks is anything but accidental. It operates with quiet precision, drawing men step by step into a web of dependency. The genius lies in how each mechanism is disguised as love, care, or responsibility. What looks like partnership is often control in a softer costume. The most powerful lever is money. Marriage often begins with joint accounts, shared mortgages, and co-signed loans. On the surface, this makes sense. Two people building a future together, but beneath the surface, financial merging creates chains stronger than iron. A man's earning power, once his tool of independence, becomes fuel for a machine he no longer steers. He works longer hours, not to pursue his own ambitions, but to sustain a lifestyle he may not even have chosen. Consider the entrepreneur who once risked everything to build his business. Now, with a family home tied to his name, he dares not risk anything. The same daring spirit that once made him unstoppable now feels like a liability. What was once his greatest strength, his willingness to take risks, has been neutered by obligations that never feel negotiable. He begins to confuse responsibility with captivity, and though he may not admit it, he knows he is no longer free. The next mechanism is social pruning. Male friendships, once the backbone of camaraderie and sanity, are reframed as childish indulgences. At first it is subtle. Do you really need to see your friends this often? Then it grows sharper. Why would you prioritize them over us? The man tells himself it's natural to drift apart from old companions. But what's really happening is isolation, without male peers to mirror his authentic self. He loses perspective, without anyone to remind him who he was. He cannot see who he is becoming. Think of the man who once played cards every Friday night with the same group of friends. Over time, those nights dwindle, until the deck collects dust in a drawer. His circle shrinks, and with it, his sense of identity. He doesn't notice how strategic this isolation is, because it arrives wrapped in the language of devotion. Shouldn't I be spending more time at home? Yet when he looks around years later, he finds himself alone, with no external anchors to remind him of his own worth outside the household. Then comes the merging of identity. It starts innocently enough. Instead of "I like hiking," he says, "We like hiking." Instead of "I enjoy jazz," it becomes "We prefer quiet nights in." Slowly, his individuality dissolves into the collective. The very phrases he uses betray the shift. To disagree becomes disloyalty. To want something different becomes selfish. His personal tastes, humor, and opinions get sanded down until he resembles not the man he once was, but the optimized partner he has been molded into. Nietzsche once said, "Those who were seen dancing were thought insane by those who could not hear the music." Many men stop dancing entirely, not because they lost the rhythm, but because they are taught their song no longer matters. Psychologists call this process the externalization of control. Where once a man trusted his own judgment, he now seeks permission. Should he buy that shirt? Is it okay to stay late at work? Even decisions that once felt instinctive become filtered through another's approval. Each small surrender of judgment weakens his inner compass, until eventually he is guided not by desire or conviction, but by the avoidance of conflict. He becomes, in effect, a passenger in his own life. Think of it like a velvet cage, soft to the touch, comfortable at first glance, even attractive in its design. Yet no matter how soft the bars, they still lock. The velvet makes the cage harder to see, harder to resist, and harder to admit. For many men, this is where the danger lies. They cannot call it a prison because the walls look like love. They cannot name it captivity because the door was closed with a kiss. But whether velvet or steel, the cage serves the same function. It confines, and here is where the tragedy deepens. These mechanisms do not merely strip away freedom, they distort memory. A man begins to recall his past independence as immaturity. He reinterprets his youthful freedom as recklessness. He tells himself he has grown wiser, when in truth he has grown more compliant. The system not only cages him, it convinces him he wanted the cage all along. If you sense a knot tightening in your stomach as you hear this, it is because some part of you recognizes the pattern. Maybe in yourself, maybe in a friend, maybe in the quiet despair you see in the eyes of men who no longer laugh the way they once did. And if you've ever wondered why those men feel so lifeless, the answer lies here. They are not merely tired. They are not merely older. They are being drained by a machinery designed to extract their vitality, one concession at a time. But this is only the surface. The system does not stop with money, friends, or identity. It goes deeper, into the most intimate corners of a man's life. The very thing he believes is the proof of love. Affection, desire, intimacy becomes another lever of control. And when intimacy itself is turned into a currency, the collapse of confidence and the death of desire follow soon after. The most devastating control mechanism is not financial, nor social, nor even the erosion of identity. It is the quiet weaponization of intimacy. For centuries, men believed that the bond of love, expressed through touch, affection, and sex, was their sanctuary, the one place where performance ended and presence was enough. But in the machinery of modern relationships, even intimacy is redefined. It shifts from a natural exchange of passion into a conditional system of reward and punishment. Desire is no longer spontaneous. It becomes a transaction. Affection arrives when he has behaved well, when the bills are paid on time, when the chores are completed, when expectations are met. In this system, intimacy becomes a ration, distributed according to performance. What should be a gift of love becomes a paycheck cashed for obedience. A man who once believed he was loved for who he is slowly learns he is only loved for what he does. The psychological cost of this shift is enormous. Affection is not a luxury for men. It is a necessity. When it becomes conditional, it rewrites the man's self-worth at the deepest level. He learns to measure himself not by his own desires or convictions, but by how well he plays the role of husband-provider. He becomes an actor on a stage, tailoring his every move to keep the play going. Terrified of the curtain falling, soon he is no longer himself at all. He is a character optimized to meet expectations, trapped in a role he cannot leave without risking everything. As Jung warned, what you resist not only persists, but grows. The more he suppresses his frustration, the more it consumes him, until he no longer knows where the role ends and the real man begins. This distortion extends beyond the bedroom. It seeps into ambition itself. The hobbies that once brought joy, fixing cars, playing guitar, reading philosophy, running trails, are recast as wastes of time. They do not advance the household. Therefore, they are selfish. Men begin to abandon the activities that once made them feel alive. At first, it feels like compromise, but in time, it becomes suffocation. What replaces these passions are tasks that serve utility, but not the soul. Yard work, home repairs, endless errands. He is busy, yet empty, productive, yet passionless. He becomes efficient at maintaining stability, but starved of meaning. And in that starvation, something darker takes root. Psychologists call it achievement anhedonia, the inability to feel joy from accomplishment. A man once thrilled by finishing a project now feels nothing. Success no longer satisfies because it no longer belongs to him. The promotion matters less than the new family car. The book he wanted to write gathers dust while the bathroom renovation takes center stage. His dreams shrink until they fit inside a calendar and a budget. He ceases to ask, "What do I want?" Instead, he asks, "What is needed of me?" This shift, from inner fire to outer obligation, is the slow death of masculine vitality. The fallout is not limited to ambition. Confidence itself crumbles. Men who once made decisions with clarity now hesitate, paralyzed by the fear of disapproval. They become hypervigilant, constantly scanning for signs of dissatisfaction. A text without an emoji triggers hours of anxious overthinking. A sigh across the dinner table feels like an indictment. He begins to second-guess even the smallest choices. Whether to stay an extra hour at work, whether to buy a cup of coffee, whether to call an old friend. The lion who once roared now tiptoes, terrified of stepping on invisible landmines. Over time, this anxiety rewrites his memories. He looks back at the days of freedom and begins to reinterpret them. His independence, irresponsibility, his confidence, arrogance, his passion, immaturity. This rewriting soothes the dissonance, convincing him that his current life of quiet subservience is not a prison, but progress. And so, he becomes both victim and accomplice, supplying the very justifications that keep him chained. Consider the man who scrolls through old photographs. In one, he is standing with friends at a campsite, laughing, mud on his boots, a bottle in hand. In another, he is on stage playing music, eyes closed, face alive with passion. He looks at those images and barely recognizes himself. He tells himself he has grown up, that such joy was childish, that true maturity is measured in utility. But deep down, he feels the hollowness. He knows something has been buried alive. And here lies the cruelest paradox. The very traits that once attracted his partner, his confidence, his individuality, his passion, are the traits now eroded by the system of control. The woman who fell in love with a man who led, who laughed, who burned with vitality, often finds herself years later frustrated by his passivity and compliance. What she fails to see is that she helped engineer the very man she now resents. And what he fails to see is that his transformation was never inevitable. It was designed. By now, the pattern is clear. Men are not simply growing older. They are being reshaped, recast, and repurposed into tools of household utility. Their bodies, their minds, their very identities become engines to fuel a life they no longer recognize as their own. But the tragedy does not end with them, because every boy who watches his father beg permission for ordinary freedoms absorbs that image as truth. The cycle of domestication does not stop with one generation. It is handed down like an heirloom. And this is where the stakes rise far beyond the individual man. Because when sons inherit the broken identity of their fathers, the domestication is complete. It ceases to be a private tragedy and becomes a cultural blueprint. The deepest wound of domestication is not what happens to one man, but how it quietly programs the next generation. A boy does not need to be told that manhood means sacrifice. He sees it every day at his kitchen table. He watches his father pause before answering, gauging his mother's reaction before speaking. He sees him ask permission to visit family, to spend money, to rest. He learns that love means obedience, that masculinity means utility, and that maturity means erasing yourself for others. Without a word spoken, The lesson is passed on. Your worth as a man is measured by how much of yourself you can surrender. By the time he grows into adulthood, the boy is already half domesticated, walking willingly into the same harness his father wore. The cycle renews itself, generation after generation, with fewer men remembering what freedom even looked like. This is the quiet genius of the system. It doesn't just capture men, it conditions entire bloodlines. Men compare their lives not to what could be, but to other men already bound by the same constraints. They tell themselves, this is just what marriage is, because every example they see around them seems to confirm it. Yet what they fail to notice is the hidden selection bias. The men who resisted, who refused, who reclaimed themselves, those men are gone. They are divorced. They are absent from polite gatherings, or they live at the fringes. Invisible to the mainstream, what remains in view are the compliant, the broken, and the domesticated. This distorted picture convinces countless others that their quiet despair is universal, that their cages are simply life. But that is a lie. Even so, the machinery is not invincible. Awakening is possible. For some men, it arrives through crisis, a health scare that forces a reckoning, a financial collapse that strips away illusions, a sudden loss that makes the emptiness unbearable. For others, it is quieter, the lingering dissatisfaction of years lived on someone else's terms, the late-night realization that the man in the mirror no longer resembles the man they once dreamed of becoming. In either case, the first step is always the same: brutal honesty. No more justifications, no more disguising obedience as maturity. No more pretending that erasure is growth. The man must look at the bars of his cage and name them for what they are. The next step is rediscovery. Identity cannot be rebuilt overnight, but it can be reclaimed piece by piece. Reconnecting with forgotten friends, reviving abandoned hobbies, speaking truths long silenced. These are not trivial acts, but lifelines back to authenticity. Each small act of defiance against domestication strengthens the muscle of autonomy. Saying no without guilt, choosing for oneself without apology, remembering that desires are not sins, but signals of life. These are the building blocks of reclamation. As Viktor Frankl once said, those who have a why to live can bear almost anyhow. Men must rediscover their why, not the one imposed by family expectations or social contracts, but the one that burns quietly within them, waiting to be heard. This path is not easy. It requires courage to walk against the current, to endure the backlash of those who benefited from your silence. It requires rebuilding the capacity for judgment after years of outsourcing it. It requires learning once more how to stand alone, how to live without constant validation, how to accept the cost of freedom. But the alternative, the slow suffocation of your own spirit, is far more costly. For when a man gives away his autonomy, he loses not just his freedom, but his dignity. And dignity, once gone, is harder to reclaim than any possession. Understand this clearly. You are not born to be a beast of burden. You are not meant to measure your worth by how efficiently you serve someone else's vision of the good life. You are not placed on this earth to disappear into the background of your own story. You are a human being, not a utility, a partner, not an employee, a man, not a machine. Real partnership does not erase individuality. It celebrates it. Real love does not demand obedience. It thrives on freedom. Real growth does not require surrender. It requires strength. The cage has always been there, but so has the key. The door is not locked. The only question is whether you will have the courage to walk through it. The first step is recognition. The second is reclamation. And the third is responsibility. Not the false responsibility of financing someone else's dreams, but the true responsibility of honoring your own life. For only when you reclaim your own freedom can you create relationships that are genuine, balanced, and rooted in respect rather than control. If you have felt the weight of this truth pressing against your chest, know that you are not alone. Millions of men carry the same silent burden, and millions more are beginning to see the bars of their cages. Share this knowledge with those who need it. Not because it will make life easier, but because it will make it real. And in reality, there is hope. The choice between being a domesticated animal and reclaiming your humanity has always been yours. It still is. The door stands open. Will you walk through it?